Morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Community Development Meeting. Today's date is June 11th, 2026. The time is 10 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Everline, Duncan, and Behary. I'm going to call this meeting to order. There are no opening remarks, so there are any changes to the agenda. Hearing none. Poll for conflicts of interest. Are there any polls or conflicts up here? On here. We will begin with public hearing, item number 1. This is ORA 26-0001, expired building permit ordinance. It's an action item, and I have Chris Garland.
Good morning, Chris Garland for the record.
And just real quick, because of the way that we have the video, we just ask that you speak up a little louder. Just
Microphone's on. Oh, wait. Okay. Chris Garland, building official. Presented to you is expired building permits. This is just updated information for a sliding scale for building permits that are expired. These building permits, we have made attempts to contact the owners to rectify, to get the buildings completed. Most of these have either changed ownership. There are any changes to the existing structure. And this way we can be able to close out these building permits. We won't have to notify any of the new owners or any of the owners that aren't aware, or at least we have made the attempts to notify them that these permits are expired. And we have no life safety issues also on these permit buildings.
thank you. Are there any questions? Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to speak for incorporating this ordinance? Anybody here who would like to speak for adopting this ordinance? Is there anyone who would like to speak against adopting this ordinance? Anybody in here who would like, or on the telephone would like to speak against adopting this ordinance? Hearing nothing, I'll take a motion to end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I move that we end public testimony for ORA 26-0001 and end into deliberations.
Do I have a second? Yeah, second.
Commissioner Everly, Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Tari.
Aye. Thoughts on this?
I think it's a good idea. I like the sideboards that are put in place. And again, if it turns out that there's something we aren't aware of, we can redress it.
Okay.
Does it apply to people who have those small house buildings from them?
No, these are only open permits, not.
Okay, yeah, there's expired status.
All right, well, with that said, I'll take a motion.
Move that we approve ORA 26-0001 for the expired building permit ordinance.
Second.
Commissioner Everly.
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chairman Tari.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, item 2, ORA 26-0002, surface mining. It's an action item, and Ben Tarbutton.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ben Tarbutton, Kootenai County for the record. This is a scheduled public hearing for an ordinance amendment for surface mining. It has been brought to our attention from the Aquifer Protection District. It was scheduled before the Planning Commission, and upon conclusion of that hearing, they recommended it be remanded back to staff for further analysis, research, and after coordination with some of the public. Looks like there may be some different options for us to consider. And so we're still kind of working on that. The reason it is here before you today is because it was double noticed for the planning commission and for the board. And we didn't have enough time to pull the notice before the board. And so we are continuing with the process. Based on our legal counsel's advice, if it's the discretion of the board, they can open up the public hearing to gather any public testimony that may be from somebody here today. But then, of course, then we can still remand it back to staff to you at a date future.
Are there any questions?
So just, are we going to actually close the public hearing today then, and then we'll just read out for a new one?
You could do that. I would recommend that if anybody is here to give testimony, that you go ahead and take testimony. And then you can close public testimony and then enter into deliberations, decide what you want to do.
Anything else?
Nothing else for staff at this point.
Okay, any questions by the board? All right. Is there anyone here who is for this ordinance and would like to speak? Anybody who is for the ordinance and would like to speak? I have a Robert Moore here who is neutral and may wish to speak. You want to speak?
Sure.
All right, just come on up to the podium. Just please state your name for the record and speak a little extra loud because the microphone is over there.
Okay. Name is Robert Moore. I'm with Fort Lane Paving. We operate in the industry of surface mining, and I guess I would just, I was here for the last meeting. I guess I would just propose that whatever vertical rock or whatever means we decide on to protect, to address the concern of the aquifer, I think a good look should be made at whether the existing restrictions posed by DEQ and so forth are not adequate. We really didn't hear any case made for them being inadequate to justify further restrictions that are going to have an impact on everybody, on the construction business and the cost of projects. So yeah, that's all I have.
Well, thank you very much. Is there anyone here who is against this and would like to speak? Anybody here who is against this and would like to speak? Hearing nothing. Take a minute to end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I move that we end public testimony and enter into deliberations for ORA 26-0002.
Second.
Commissioner Everline, Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chair Matari.
Aye. Thoughts?
Man, back.
The staff? Okay. I'll take a motion.
I move that we remand ORA 26-0002. Surface mining back to staff.
Second.
Commissioner Everline. Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chair Matari.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Next up are deliberations. This is item 3, CUP 26-0004, Christian Center School Gym Expansion, and Mr. Vlad Finkel.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Community Development. This is a request by Fort Lane Center School. You received an executive summary last week that gives a quick synopsis of the proposal. This is a request by the organization to expand the existing conditional use permit to allow the construction of a 30,000 square foot gymnasium on one of the 3 5-acre parcels that the organization currently owns. The project site is located at 3639 West Prairie Avenue. As you can see, the site is fairly flat. You have existing parking lot, existing sanctuary building that serves as a school, as well as a facility for hosting different types of sports events, and we have some fields here for kids to recreate outside and do their sports activities. The goal is to be able to construct a gymnasium on this northern 5-acre parcel. This facility was originally established in 1979 when the county did not have any regulations that would require a land use permit process. In 97, the county adopted regulations that then required all places of worship or assembly to go through a conditional use permit process. And when the applicant initially contacted the county in early 2000s to expand the facility to allow for the placement of classroom buildings, modular buildings on site, they were told they need to go through a formal conditional use permit process to have it be officially approved. They had done that. They have since requested the placement of additional buildings in 2023, and the then community development director approved it through a minor modification process. When the applicants initially contacted our office last year, we advised them that the proposed gymnasium, in our view, would require or would trigger a major modification process simply because it was a large facility that was not contemplated in the past, and it was not within the sideboards of the approved use in 2002. And that initiated basically them going through the design phase and contact the agencies and pursue this major modification request that's before you today. The subject property is located within the agricultural zone and over the aquifer. And our main concern when we advised the applicant that they had to go through a major modification process was that, as you know, there are strict requirements for the amount of wastewater discharge that can be created over the aquifer. And in this case, they could not exceed the limitations of 750 gallons per day of wastewater, which is which is 250 gallons of wastewater discharge per every 5 acres. So the applicants advised both our department as well as Panhandle Health District that the number of students would not be increased. It would remain as is. It's just that they needed to have a new facility to be able to host sports facilities, and it would not be in conflict with their worship services or classroom work that they currently have on site. So capacity and intensity of the existing site would not be increased with this new build, and we felt that that was fine, and Panhandle Health District did not see an issue as they reviewed this application. The comp plan designation is border, and typically when it comes to the expansion of the existing use rather than a facility, we don't go through the details of a comprehensive plan review and analysis for compatibility and so forth, because it's an established use, and in this case, it's almost 50 years in the making. Based on the new AOI map, geographical boundaries, the property is currently within the city Coeur d'Alene AOI. It used to be previously within the city of Heath. The city of Coeur d'Alene did not have any concerns or issues with the proposed expansion. I already spoke about the history. If you have any questions, I can provide additional comments. This is the site plan. I can go through this really briefly. Additional details, so forth. Photos of existing structures on the property. None of the agencies really had any concerns. We received long comment and support. We really don't see any issue with this project. Everyone seems to be on board. It's not going to have any additional impact. There is a requirement by the highway district that they retain an area for future connection to the right of way north of the subject property when that is approved, and when that connection will be needed. This request was heard by the hearing examiner last month, and they subsequently submitted a recommendation of approval. I stand for any questions that you have for me.
Thank you. Any questions? I see that there was at least one public comment in favor.
Yes, sir.
No one against.
Nope.
Thoughts on this?
I'm comfortable with the project.
All right, well, I'll take a motion then.
I move that we approve CB 26-0004, which is the Christian Center School, modification of CB gym expansion.
Second.
Commissioner Everline, Commissioner Duncan, Chairman Tari,
Aye, motion carries. Thank you. Next up are business items. Number 4, area of impact with Ben Tarbutton.
Morning Commissioners, I'm Tarbutton, County for the record. Have a PowerPoint presentation here that we'll go through. So this is kind of bringing this back to before the board. We had a decision made in December of 2025. And 4 cities were have established an AOI. Rathdrum, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, and Hayden. During that hearing, the board offered the option of opening up a workshop for any city to either request or have a dialogue with the board to request an expansion of the 8th of a mile boundary or to include standards that the cities would like to apply to these boundaries. Just as a brief history for you for the area of impact, there was a legislative bill passed in 2024. The existing areas of city impact agreements and boundaries were to be expired at the end of 2025. And that's what prompted the engagement with the county and the cities, and the city and the counties, county and the cities have been working throughout 2024, 2025, and even puts today. Part of the legislation did create some guidelines for these areas of impact, including anticipated growth, geographic factors, transportation, areas that are reasonably to be expected to be annexed within a 5-year period, and other public service district boundaries. Again, as we got here today, December 18th was the decision from the board to approve the area of impact and establish an area of impact boundary for Coeur d'Alene, Hayden, Post Falls, and Rathdrum. We have been coordinating with the cities about workshop. We have requested information that the cities provide. I believe that information has been provided to you for your review. And here we are today. Again, these were approved for 1/8 of a mile and no standards of the cities within these specific area of impact boundaries. The remaining cities have yet to have an area of impact established. So with that, I think what we're trying to do is just open up and set the table for the board to engage with the cities, and we let the board decide on how they'd like to proceed from here.
Thank you. Comments, questions?
Just looking forward to hearing from them.
You want to start with first city and just work our way down, or
we can go alphabetical.
Mike Behary, Community Development Director for the record. We did have a sign up sheet in the back there for the city to sign up sheet. We would be able to go down the list and call each city up one at a time.
I believe this is it.
Okay, you have it? Okay.
So we can start with the city of Athol.
Good morning, President Grant Wickman for the record. I am the city's consulting planner for Athol. Didn't really know what kind of shape today's meeting was going to take. I don't have a formal presentation for you, but I can go over the city's proposal. And yeah, if you want to spend, if you just wanted to pull that map up. This this is the map that represents the city's proposal, that we've had since, I don't know, almost a year ago now. I think since we made this initial, request of the county. It is larger than the eighth of a mile proposal or that approach that you have established for the other larger cities previously this year. The city council has discussed this issue pretty extensively, and they feel that this area is warranted. It is a significant reduction from what we used to have as an area of impact, area of city impact. But they feel that this is the biggest issue for Athol is we are in the path of growth. It is coming north, marching up the prairie. And they want to be notified of stuff that's happening in their area of impact. And therefore, they're requesting a little larger area. The impact, if even, what you guys would consider a moderate sized project is on a small city like Athol, less than 1,000 population, moderate sized projects have a much greater impact on the city. And therefore they are asking for a little larger area for their area of impact. Again, it's primarily to get out that notice requirement so that they get notice in the process when adjacent or when properties in the area of impact are asking for some kind of approval at the county. If it's not within the area of impact, it's something that we have to go, looking for on a regular basis, or we're relying on the rumor mill in order to, we watch your agendas, that sort of thing. But by the time it appears on an agenda, it's often well into the process and maybe too late for us to have a meaningful input on it. And so that is the map that we've been requesting. Ben, do you want to, if you go to the other map, this was included in the May or April 22nd letter. This is a comparison map that shows the eighth of a mile versus the eighth of a mile approach that you took for the larger cities versus what we are requesting. You can see the areas where we are a little bit where we are larger than the eighth of a mile. The city council also felt that there were two standards that they would like the county to consider. We feel they are simple standards that could be incorporated in the area of impact. They'd be easy for staff to administer. One is, the first standard is that all lots created after adoption of this chapter shall have a minimum lot width of 90 feet at its narrowest point. And each lot have direct access on a publicly maintained road. That is the standard within the city, and they require road frontage and that 90-foot lot width. And this would make, that would be easy to implement in your subdivision process. It would make these lots more compatible with what we do in the city. And then also, you do not have a height limitation, surprisingly enough, in your rural zone, which is what surrounds most of the city of Idaho. And the city would request a 35-foot maximum height on buildings. Again, relatively easy to implement at your building permit stage. And so those are two additional standards. Most important to the city, however, is the area, and that's what we're most what is most important to the city in getting an area of impact established. And other than that, unless you have questions, I know you've got plenty of other cities to go through, and so I appreciate you taking the time to hear us out.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do, sewer system, what, all the shades of yellow of the request, can that be serviced in the next 5 years with your sewer system?
The city does not have a sewer system.
Okay.
City has a water system and the city's water system has been recently upgraded with additional storage. The city doesn't anticipate well, you can't predict. It depends on the uses that you have in these areas. Of course, but the city does have substantial additional capacity to be able to service areas that it currently does not service. And so, but it really depends, you know, on the nature of those uses. You know, if everybody came in, you know, if the city were to annex the entirety of that area, with water intensive uses, it would require significant upgrades to the city's water system. Without a doubt. But that's what comes with new growth.
All right, is Athol Oklahoma?
Yes, it is.
And do you have, it looks like you've got very small lot sizes.
Yes. So the city has a, well, what we used to call sewage management agreements. Well, we still do, but we have a pretty elaborate and close tracking of septic systems within the city. Each lot is given one dwelling equivalent, each existing lots, but you only get new dwelling equivalents upon annexation at the same rate that they exist in the county, at 1 per 5 acres. And so if somebody comes in with a subdivision request, for example, they have to bring their own sewer solution. We've got one pending right now. Colton Acres First Edition, it's in the northwest part of the town, part of the city, and they are working on, they're in our process, but they are working on developing their own sewage treatment facility. And for the, you know, somewhere between 100 and 200 lots that they will have there. And so, and that is what happened with the Crossings development where Super One exists. They developed their own sewage treatment facility, which is operating today and is what services that part of the city. So it's unlike any other city in that regard, how we handle wastewater. You know, as far as other cities in Kootenai County, it's unlike any of the others, but it's currently working for us.
And then if the 1 acre file is adopted, how will the city handle that?
Well, we'll be happy to have an area of impact for starters, so we'll take what we can get. But you know, we'll, I don't know. That'll be up to the city council, I guess, ultimately. I don't have an answer for you. You know, it's helpful to us. It restores our ability to annex. You know, we do have one property that the city actually owns that we would like to annex, and we can't right now. And that's, you know, a city-owned parcel.
It's contiguous with the current.
Yeah, yes, yeah, it's the city cemetery on Highway 54 exists just outside of city limits. The city's water tank exists there. And the city cemetery exists there. So, and so, yeah, that would be one that we would be working on right now, had we the ability to annex between us. And so regaining that ability to annex is important to us. Not that we've got other than the city's interest, we've got a couple of potential pending small annexations, but they are, you know, we're just held up on those, so, and they're adjacent to the Crossings development over there, you know, they're 20 acres on one and 10 or 15 acres on the other. Not significant.
Is anybody else from your organization?
I don't think so. I think I covered it.
Any questions? I have a couple of questions. So if I understand correctly, Athol makes the developers pay for the sewage treatment facility?
Yeah,
Practice.
yes, if you are large enough to justify one, if one will pencil for you, you know, you've got to come with your own solution there. The city doesn't provide wastewater treatment. And so, you know, if you want to develop at greater than 1 per 5, then you've got to solve that problem.
Why wouldn't the city just tax the rest of the residents to help pay for that and not push it on the developer?
Um. Because that's just not how they do things in Apple, frankly. They don't, they believe that the new growth ought to pay its own way without a burden on the existing residents.
Bingo. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
I knew you were going.
That's right, because Athol doesn't seem to believe that the growth that occurs within the city should be paid for by that growth, and that the county should actually be subsidizing part of that. The county has attempted, since I became a commissioner, to try to get an impact fee in place for the jail, which is a state mandated service that the city gets the benefit of. And yet, 4 members over there on their city council said, we don't want to collect the impact fee, which effectively has nullified the ability for the county to collect that impact fee for the entire county. And so it's kind of strange to hear that Athol believes that growth should pay for itself for its own city, but it doesn't believe that growth should pay for itself when it comes to the county taxpayer. And that's kind of the thing that stands out to me, is that, you know, we should have a consistent policy throughout the county that says we believe growth should pay for itself and not saddle the existing residents to have to foot that burden. Does that seem reasonable, would you think?
You know, commissioners, I work for the council, they don't work for me.
Okay.
And so, you know, so they have their beliefs and I've never discussed that particular subject with them, so I'd be out of bounds and speculating how they would proceed or how they would like me to answer them.
Fair enough. What about a comp plan? Do they have a comp plan?
Yes.
Okay. Does it address public safety at all?
Yes, it's one of the required elements. It's addressed in there briefly. And it acknowledges that law enforcement services are provided by the county in accordance with the state law on that matter.
Yeah. Look, from my perspective, I don't want to impede any city from being able to grow if it can grow. But what I don't want is to see the county taxpayer have to subsidize that growth because cities don't believe they have an obligation to work with the counties to help pay for that, the cost of that growth, the consequence of it. I'm completely for giving cities a reasonable area of impact if the property owners are very comfortable with it. That's part of the issue we dealt with in December. There's a lot of people, not necessarily correctly, thought that their land was going to be annexed into the city automatically just by falling within the area of impact. So the cities, of course, should have a comp plan. Not all cities do, as I think you probably know.
Yes.
Which by statute they must have. I think they should have a comp plan that addresses public safety. I think that they should participate in helping to collect impact fees that are definitely for state mandated services for the county, which are courthouses and jails. And I think that that we recognize that every city resident pays county taxes. And some portion of that county taxes goes towards the sheriff's office patrol services. But cities inherently, because of their density, oftentimes draw an excess amount of law enforcement. And that's why when you look at crime statistics between urban areas and rural areas, urban are typically 50 to 100% higher than in rural areas. And as a consequence of that, you get crime that's concentrated in these cities. And so after you take a look at how much the city residents pay towards the sheriff's office, anything that goes beyond that, it seems reasonable that the city should have that in their plans and an option for the county to seek reimbursement for them. And that way the growth is actually public safety is thought about as a cost of growth, as opposed to just kind of cost shifting it onto the county, because the statute says that the sheriff is the primary enforcer of the penal code. There's not enough money in the county to enforce Idaho penal code throughout all the cities if they disbanded their police departments. We would be living in probably a Hobson type state where everyone's out for themselves, just not funny. So that's where I kind of stand with it. And I'm very supportive of the cities that want to grow, but I'm not supportive of shifting the cost of that growth onto the county taxpayer. That's my fiduciary. And I think that's the city council's fiduciary to their city residents, which is why they force developers to pay for the sewage treatment plants and not tax their citizens to help pay for these developments. Yes. So, I mean, that's all I have. Getting more from the board.
I have some questions for that, for staff.
Sure.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you.
Would the 90-foot minimum lot width, 35-foot maximum height cause any concerns for development?
Typically, we don't see a lot of residential development that exceeds 35 feet in height, so I don't have to be problematic. We have few properties that are zoned commercial within that area. And so, again, 35 feet seems to be a reasonable height. It doesn't seem to be problematic. The 90-foot frontage would probably be a little bit more controversial, especially when it comes through subdivisions. And so I think that would definitely cause some concern, but.
And then with any of these, can people apply for a variance?
If there were a standard in place for both of these two things, height and lot frontage and requirements. Yes, I do believe that is both, those are both standards that could be subject to a variance request.
Okay, we'll move on to the next city, city of Post Falls. And Bob Seal.
Commissioners, Bob Seal, Community Development Director for the State of Post Falls. I had provided just kind of an email. I wasn't necessarily sure I was gonna have a presentation. And we recognized the commissioner's response when it came to the boundary. So we weren't here to try and ask for expansion of our boundary. Even though I did have residents contact us asking to be added into our AOI, felt that it really, didn't matter a lot. That they could request annexation when they were ready, when they were adjacent to city limits. As for the standards, we were just kind of looking at how growth is expanding within the city area. As you know, is kind of a slow and steady transition towards city development standards throughout our area. We have a lot of annexations that come in 5 or 10 acre increments, because those are landowners or homeowners that have decided it's time for them to develop their property. And so we're kind of looking for, when we look at that 660-foot boundary, that's the equivalent of 1 or 2 5-acre parcels. So we're kind of looking for those that are within the 660-foot boundary, the AOI, that if they do intend to do some form of subdivision or platting within that, that they are met with certain standards. That if they're going to propose a subdivision that's smaller than 10 acres, so you're talking, say, a 20-acre property that wants to split in half, that it meet the standards for water, wastewater, stormwater management, street construction, as well as ones that if they were to develop at a greater density than 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres. Again, this is protecting the rights of the next neighbor who's literally right next door that may want to develop in the near future, so that we have some kind of steady transition there. We had an annexation recently that it's in our central island area, so it's completely surrounded by city, but it was a 15-acre piece, and there's still 600 feet on one side and 1,000 feet on the other before they reach primary roadways, and that's where the infrastructure is located. So there's two parcels adjacent to that between the existing. And those ones in particular, you know, they will likely come in at not too distant future and expand the road and put in the sidewalk. So I'm just trying to hopefully reduce the expectation that those ones could have, you know, gone to the county earlier, added additional dwelling units, changed the way that they have currently as established. Or the second part of this looks at if a building permit were to be issued for one of those 5-acre parcels to replace or construct a new structure, that all it do is just meet the setbacks as would be determined by using the city's future right of ways. So this helps to reduce the impact later on should adjacent parcels annex and expand their roads, that the city would be able to at least construct the road without having to take down a house later on. That we would recognize that if it were not to annex, that if it were to be requested to annex, that we would likely I didn't annex, but if we were to look for expansion of the roadway without the annexation, that we just want to be able to build the road up to the future work. So but we do recognize that if the subdivision plats or boundary line adjustments that do not meet the aforementioned conditions, that they just meet all the health requirements, which is what you do standard. Again, not looking for a lot, but looking for some kind of little bit of restrictions just to kind of help with the general growth that happens, not to take away the private property rights of those that do look to come to the city that are just right outside that area.
Are you looking for a little bit of a restriction, or are you looking for a mechanism that just triggers a review to try to, you know, develop a cooperative relationship that says, hey, we may not let you do this because ultimately this land, you know, should probably be annexed into the city of Falls.
I think that the way that it was operating under the previous agreement worked relatively. They provided a notice to the city for review, and we were able to provide comments. And just some kind of mechanism that does allow for us to make those comments and hold them to that standard if it applies. We don't want, I don't think that's necessary for the county staff to have to apply our standard that we're asking for. We're happy to show, okay, this is how that standard works.
So if there was a lot next to one that actually fell within the area of impact, maybe we're just getting a letter from the county that says, hey, by the way, this property owner wants to steal the property.
Yes, essentially, yes. And we would receive emails typically. I kind of look at these guys, I know who receives the emails, so I just want to confirm it. You guys send us email, right?
And is that logistically feasible with respect to not creating a whole bunch of additional work?
So our online system for permit review, we would send out to different agencies. We could include the city of Post Falls as an agency, respond accordingly. So it wouldn't create any additional burden for anyone's end.
And again, just looking for the ones that are within the AOI.
That seem reasonable.
Well, we're not, in my mind, we're not here to make a decision today. I'd like to bring it back for a public hearing if we're able to get all the cities on page, but I do have several questions. So it sounded to me like, yeah, you want to be notified, but if your standards are in place, the county cannot override them. You want whatever development to apply to those standards.
If it's fall within the AOI, we would like them to fall under these standards.
Sure. So Post Falls Highway District, how does their right of way vary from Post Falls City?
It's very different. So when I'm trying to think, we've got lots of different projects happening right now. So over on McGuire, there is a development that's happening. And so the Coastal Highway District has their right of way that's been established, and it might be a 40-foot right of way right now. Whereas the future city road is 80-foot right of way. So what we're looking for is if a house was to be reconstructed on that parcel, that it meets that additional right of way width on that side, which might be 20 feet one side. That's kind of what's going on there. And it is doing kind of there's one that left at a parcel at the corner. And we're not asking him to annex, it's up to him when he decides to. So the roadway configuration is kind of remaining the old standard in front of his parcel, whereas slightly to the west of that, it will be expanded. And putting in the required sidewalk and curb gutter. So I'm, let's see, expand roadway. And we're working with the Post West Highway District to analyze that section of the roadway. And actually, we have developers agreed to repave the entire section of the road that's remains within the Post West Highway District due to the increased traffic due to the subdivision. But it is kept within the existing rights of way. But those rights of ways don't have room for any expansion of roadway or the sidewalk. But hopefully in the future, when it's time, that's not going to be able to have this parcel developed. Still be those.
Something that I may consider is instead of adopting standards, is be able to tell people in the AOI and look at it staff, and that, hey, if you do want to annex, here's your requirements. So if you do not follow these requirements in your development, even though the county is not requiring them, then you may not be able to annex. Is that a fair? Just notification. That makes sense.
As far as notification goes, I think that is reasonable requirement.
My only concern with that is it's not necessarily about the future annexation of the parcel next door. Maybe it's just about the simple future expansion of roads. If there's one outlier, you have a 80-foot right of way that comes to a 40-foot right of way. That's something that will be a gap forever until, especially if they build a new house. All we're asking is that it be pushed back a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, City of Hauser does not have a representative, but okay, come on up.
Mr. Commissioner, Commissioners, thank you for this time for the workshop. We appreciate the dialogue, and we appreciate your willingness to engage with us. We are, in essence, I just emailed Mr. Tarbutton a map. I don't know if you can pull it up off of the email, but if I may approach.
Yeah, just take your name for the record.
Kinzo Behary, City Attorney, City of Hauser. So when the map gets pulled up, it'll be a black and white version of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so in essence, the city of Hauser had engaged with the county staff extensively in the 2024, 2025 timeframe. Believe we have a resolution, at least from a perspective of a staff recommendation to both the city council for the city as well as to this body. We came last, I believe, November, December, and there were concerns. And out of that process, somewhat the major cities of the county resulted in a 660-foot halo around their existing city limits. What you see on the color copies I gave you, the pink is the city limits of Hauser, and that's really represented by the properties within the black up there for the county. The properties in blue that you see on the handouts I gave you, those are the properties within those 660 feet of the existing city limits. So really what Hauser's asking for is parity with major cities. The properties that touch within the 660-foot, shall you say, halo. There are some white that are within kind of that outer boundary. And we'd ask that the county commission just fill those in for us and allow those basic data holdings to be part of our city of impact. Basically, if we annex an adjacent property, they all of a sudden become, within that core of where the city boundaries are. And so that's really what the city of Halifax is asking for is parity with the major cities, the 660 feet. Obviously, property boundaries don't just follow 660 feet. That's why we included the properties that touched within that 660 feet. And that was a major problem where we renegotiated our area of impact agreement with the county, I believe, in 2023. That was a major issue for those bisected properties, the dual zone properties. We don't want to end up with the problem we just got out of, and hence the request. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Yes. So, this map here doesn't show you have a contiguous city.
And that's part of the outgrowth between just the history of the city and the various laws that have been passed through the stages of Idaho. And so there are what are now pretty much unheard of are the shoestring annexations. So the city boundaries follow some of the roads, and that's where you get the contiguity and parcels, but that's really an outgrowth of just the history of Idaho boundary law.
And then, question for staff. Does the AOI map actually move 1/8 of a mile every time something is annexed, or is it, we have to have a map adoption?
The map will have to be adopted each time someone wants to move that mile. So if the 8th mile is approved, that's set in stone from the legal description that is approved at that time. So they never come and ask for a modification to move that line in the future.
And my understanding is, this is what we did with all the cities, as far as if it was within 1/8 of a mile, we have to incorporate the entire parcel.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's already done. The other thing I would say is, if you had a parcel that was contiguous in your 1/8 of a mile map, and then you had another one here, if this one annexes, this one's already, able to annex if they choose to, because now it's contiguous with the city.
My understanding is the biggest issue right now is having the map, having
Yes.
the area of impact. Certainly, we don't shy away from dialogue. We appreciate that. Certainly with our differences of politics between the cities and the county, but to the extent we can keep talking and keep those dialogues going, City of Hauser's interested.
And then do you have any requested standards?
We would request that, similar to Post Falls, if there is a property adjacent, that at least the city consulted. As the county knows, our area of city impact was much greater than this map, to a much larger extent, and really the old justification for that was really, you see the Highway 53 corridor there. That is somewhat the part of city's economic growth. We do have some other businesses spattered throughout the city, but really where the great economic growth is that Highway 53 corridor. We also have a boundary much further to the north. And that was really the watershed that fed Hauser Lake. And that is of a great concern, I think, not only to the residents of the city of Hauser, but just the adjacent area within the county as well. And I think other county residents that come to the facilities, county facilities in the city. And so to the extent we can be consulted, again, we'd like to keep that dialogue.
And just for reference, the lake, is that on the east side of the map?
The the orientation of that map is really west is up, north is to the right, south is to the left, and east is down below. But if you see the. All right. Yeah, approach now. Sure. It's not obvious. This is the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, the county has facilities. We in here for the boat. Are there any other questions?
Just the same comments I gave, Ethel with respect to, comp plan.
We are in the middle of our comp plan right now, and really some of this impacts some of our planning with that comp plan. So we do have a comp plan. It is a little aged, but we are in process and nearing the process of going to city council. Depending on what happens here, it might go back to our planning zone.
But just, addressing the public safety component and that, growth can pay for itself. And that we can avoid the cost shifting onto the county.
If I recall right, I used to get those law enforcement reports for the city of housing. And I'd like to say we have a pretty quiet lake community about some spatterings here and there. When I did get them, when I recall, there were 2 or 3 calls for arrests. There were arrests. I haven't gotten them in probably 2 or 3 years. We did have again, if I may approach, we did have a major annexation development in this square in the middle here about 2 or 3 years ago. But the most development work out is like building higher homes near the water, or at least overlooking the water or access to the water. That's where we're really coming at. I certainly understand the concern. But from what I recall, when I did get those law enforcement reports about arrests, calls, things like that, a lot of them were either to bars or along Highway 53 that have been there forever, or to the boat ramp for people that are unfamiliar with backing up and taking out boats. So that's my recollection. I would say to a lesser extent, but again, the city is more than willing to have a conversation and engage in a dialogue with those concerns.
According to numbers that the sheriff's office provided, it was 306 incidents in house last year.
And divided by 12, and that's less than 1 a day.
Again, it's just total cost.
No, I understand. Again, we're willing to have a dialogue and we're not being dismissed.
Yeah, and I would have, if it's too bad you weren't here yesterday, because you could see the asks that come before the board from the sheriff's office of the immense cost that is associated with that. And so really what, I've been trying to look at is, what does city residents pay towards that service in their county taxes? And then how does that measure up against the number of calls for service?
So certainly I understand it. And city residents, as you know, are county residents. And city residents pay county taxes. And again, for the entire area, which is checkerboarded, including areas of the county that don't pay any city taxes, according to your numbers, which I don't have a reason to dispute, but taking them at face value, again, that's less than 1 call a day for our area. And then again, I would suggest that the majority of those calls probably come from well-established bars that are on the Highway 53 corridor or the boat ramp area, which is a county facility.
Look, this isn't the place to litigate this.
No, I'm not.
But what I can tell you is that the information that's provided by the auditor as well as the sheriff's office, we can get that information out to you. You can look at it. If you think that there are problems with information that's provided either by the auditor or the sheriff's office, I'm certainly open to have that discussion with you offline. But these are the numbers that are given to us. This kind of articulates, the deficit or surplus, if there is, between what city residents pay towards county taxes for law enforcement and the number of calls for service in those jurisdictions.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, willing to have the dialogue. Like you said, it's not the place to litigate it.
Yep.
But as far as the area of impact, the city's asking for parity with the other cities on the 660. If we may agree, please, we should just have that and fill in the areas inside the outer boundaries. That's something I believe that, city will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Crime statistics was at 24.
City of Hayden Lake. Is anyone with the city of Hayden Lake who would like to speak today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Keith Radisson, I'm on the phone.
Okay. Go right ahead.
So we submitted two maps. One limits our AOI to an eighth of an acre. Based on the county's previous decisions. And we also submitted a map that takes it out to the 2-mile map. Which the city would prefer because of the major impact development to the north and northeast have on our streets and that type of infrastructure. So we submitted both maps prepared by our engineers. And we also like to have within the AOI have the minimum lot size be 1/3 of an acre. That's what it is in the city. It used to be 1 acre, but we changed that a few years ago. So we'd like to have a minimum lot size of 1/3 of an acre.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, do we have the image maps?
I'd asked for all the information to be resubmitted, just because I didn't want to make assumptions that a map was previously provided is still to be used. This is all that I received from the city. I could try and search.
That's
For my
okay.
information.
That's all right.
Yeah, we sent in both maps. I'm not sure where they are, but you know, they're I could read them those.
Yeah, I think it would help to look at those maps. I think there was one that you sent, and the 2 miles is a big ask. I think, especially given what's happened for the other cities. And, you know, the argument that you have would be the same argument others would make. And at some point, you know, how do you differentiate that? Because all cities are affected by the growth in other areas, especially near them, that leads to traffic and other issues that you're suggesting or have discussed.
Right.
Another question for staff. So, impact fees? People will pay impact fees if they're in the AOI to the cities?
Current, with Hayden Lake currently, yes. That's the only city that has that arrangement.
I don't think Mr. Bergson can see what's on the screen here, but if this is the current map, if this is the latest one that I received, this was from January. There's a number of different pages, but I can go through them right. Here it is. This is an overall view, and then these are kind of zoomed in on those regions.
And then the red is the request.
Correct.
That's the 2 mile buffer with the 600 foot, 660 foot.
I believe that is the 600. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Burnson, this is the 660 feet, correct?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
I can't see it on my phone, but the eighth of a mile AOI has at least 5 areas denoted on the map. The 2 mile AOI is, if there's no areas denoted, it's just one big area.
Yeah, so this,
Basically the same as the previous AOI with the large Forest Service parcel taken out of the northeast corner.
all right. I don't think we have any other questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is the city of Hayden. Is there anyone here? In the city of Hayden who would like to speak? That must be.
I am here, so. Good afternoon, good morning, if it's still morning.
And he'll need you to speak up a little.
Yeah.
So the microphone.
All right, so, I'm Donna Phillips from the city of Dayton, and the community development director. Granted us, an eighth area of impact. I think that, the press proposals that I received from the city of Portland make good sense as far as what we would like to see. We appreciate the, request for comments that the county sends us today. We always want to ensure that, aquifers protected and where they're able, they can connect to services, whether they're water, sewer, whatever. I would note that the city of Hayden is honored in the fact that, we don't have water. Our water services are provided by several water districts, primarily Appledale, Hidden Lake Irrigation District, and North Kootenai Water and Sewer District. And then we have various other long-range plans and impact fees that we collect on behalf of the fire and the emergency medical services, and they rely on our planning areas to identify where they expect growth to occur for their other infrastructure. And none of those folks are here today, but they will all be impacted by the decisions of the county related to area impact for their long-range planning opportunities. So they are impacted by decisions that are made related to that. And I had talked in conversation with Ben, and maybe that's a question later for the comprehensive plan conversation is that our currently existing comprehensive future land use map was adopted before we adopted the area impact area. So that's our planning area. And almost all of those areas surround what was previously the existing comprehensive plan was identified as transition in border areas. And so I was curious in the future comprehensive plan, if we were going to have that same kind of border transition area that the county would be addressing similarly to what they do today. So other than that, I don't have any questions for working on.
Thank you. That's something that we're making up.
Yeah, we're in the early stages of developing the future land use map. Our consultants are ready to get presentation on that. We have not established any areas such as transition or border at this time. The early phases of public input and engagement.
Okay. Any questions? Thank you. Thank you. City of Coeur d'Alene.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hillary Patterson, Community Planning Director. And thank you, Ben. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, maybe pull up the email, but then I'm going to start with the map. So maybe it's have them all open. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I submitted comments to Ben for consideration today. The first one is on mapping, so we'll talk about that first. And then the other ones were more just to kind of understand your code and how you look at development now, just for subdivisions and making sure that there is adequate ability to have wells on site and septic. City of Coeur d'Alene is different than some of the other jurisdictions. We actually provide water and sewer service outside of our city limits. So the first request to you is to amend our AOI boundary to reflect those areas. So as you saw on the slide that Ben pulled up earlier, the state statute clearly says areas that within 5 years would have municipal water or sewer. Well, we already have 5 areas that when the commission chose to modify the AOI boundaries from what was requested to do the 1/8 of a mile boundary, it ended up being kind of arbitrary for a community like ours where we have areas that we already provide service. So we would like to request that the 5 areas, one of them is wastewater, and then the other 3 are water service areas, and they have consented to future annexation. So it only makes sense and meets the state statutes to include those. Also, when the 1/8 of a mile, my email says 1/4 of a mile, so that's a typo, should have been 1/8 of a mile. It became a little arbitrary in other areas where when Vlad presented for his CUP, it shows that Coeur d'Alene's are of impact north of Prairie, but we have no interest and that's where Hayden's gonna grow. So we'd like to clip that off. At this point, we don't anticipate providing water. We're west of Hutter Road. So that's another area when we submitted our map that we didn't go west of Hutter. And when the 1/8 of a mile came into place, it included that, as well as the gated subdivision south of the river that's at the end of, I think it's no lane. So that we would like to exclude as well. So we'd like to clip some areas and then add in sport areas. So if it's helpful, maybe we can start with those maps then. The first one would be, let's start with the French Village one on the far right. So this one is the wastewater area. So we would like to include this. This is a new one that the city council agreed to serve them with sewer. They came to us with a failing community septic system. And this is one of the reasons we've asked, like, what are your standards for approving subdivision? We know this was approved long ago in the county, but it was allowed with a drain field on one individual's lot, a residential lot, versus as a tract or something where there's kind of shared use. So this property owner, and you know, why wouldn't they? There's a failed system. And the health district said, you need to figure this out. You cannot do another drain field there. This isn't working. It's on one person's lot. So they came to the city because they have no other option. And they said, can you provide sewer? And this is outside of our typical thing where we say, yeah, but we don't really want raw sewage plant. So we agreed to provide that. So that's one area we would strongly feel needs to be in our area of impact. And then the other three are water. Let's start with, I guess, in any of them. Order. Perfect. So this one is a large area, East Harrison Avenue. So some of these also for the water department, some were inherited when Idaho Water became Portland Water, and then some of the other ones are new service areas. So this area should be included as well. They all receive city water. Let's do the next one. Well, so this area that's outlined, as well as those two, or those, I guess, the three rural parcels as well. Those would need to be included. And then that's the last one. So this area is highlighted. That's to be included in our area of impact boundary.
Currently, 1 mile, there's no contiguous, right? We have to, you can't really have area of impact here. Chunk of land and then area.
The area of impact is that land
That
yellow. So this would just expand the area of impact.
Okay, perfect. So
Right, so
there's
that's
no gap in between any of the
Correct.
inclusions.
Right, exactly. So it's just gonna be divided in that. And in the areas where it was larger, that was to make sure there was that contiguity. So that's with respect to the mapping changes. The other ones, I don't know if you need to see it. I didn't provide a map showing what we'd like to clip out, but staff understands and you understand as well. The other questions we had asked, as I mentioned, was just how does the county look at when someone comes in for either a major subdivision or even a family lot split for water and septic? Because we do continue to have people come in and say, well, we kind of evaluated it and now we can't do that. And which city, would you pretty please give us some water or sewer service? And so we just want to make sure on your end that you are doing that. And Ben responded, and it does sound like that is a requirement through the planning process. But not so much on the family lot splits for the newly created lot. There's not the same level of information provided for water. So just that's something to maybe consider with your comprehensive plan as well as your codes. And then just the densities for adjacency. So if you're having county land that's adjacent to city limits developing, to really consider what's next to it within the city. So we, again, in the past, long before your time, but I gave an example, Ponderosa Terrace subdivision. Immediately next to city, we had a recent annexation and the Ponderosa Terrace received city water. They look like they're city lots, they're small lots, but they're in the county. And so it just creates this kind of weird nuance. So just to be nice if in the county is there, I guess the cluster would be the only way you could probably achieve that, because otherwise it sounds like it would be larger lots, but just to kind of be mindful of what's in the city, so there's some compatibility. And then again, long before your time, we had some of the properties, the Indian Meadows subdivision and others on our western boundary that they subdivided in the county and immediately had to come to the city for water and sewer because obviously you septic and well, and all that didn't make sense because it was an urban style development. So I think your code hopefully addresses that now, but that was one of the things we were just making sure you can address that with the comp plan and future regulations. Let's see, the other thing that I think has been brought up very well from Post Falls is just kind of the future right of ways. So we wanted to make sure that you are considering, are there transportation master plans that require dedication of right of way? Will that be considered the subdivision so that we don't have these weird offsets or the roadways, certain road width and then it doesn't match. So that was something. And then we did with our old area of city impact, we really liked the fact that we could consult on frontage improvements. And so we would be contacted and we would say if a project needed to have curb gutter, paved road, and it would only be, we'd only ever say yes if it's immediately adjacent to city limits, 2 miles down the road, that doesn't make sense, but that's something that would be nice as a performance standard, and I think all the cities would agree with that. That's all I wanted to bring up, and happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
You keep mentioning Ponderosa. Is that, do we even call that Bonanza Ranch or is that something separate?
That's different.
Okay, all right, that's all I need.
Okay, okay.
All right, well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next up is the city of Dalton Gardens. Come on down.
Good morning. My name is Jill Ainsworth. I'm the contracted planner for the city of Dalton Gardens. I'll just go over some of points that I would like to bring to the surface. Similar to some of the cities, we do not provide water services. It's a private or an association that provides water, so we're not extending water services to any of our areas of impact. And we don't have sewer services. It's all on septic systems, so we're not providing a sewer service to any of the properties within. Wells are allowed. You're not required to have a connection to the water service. You're allowed to have a well. And we require that septics be pumped every 5 years. One of the interesting things with Dalton is that the only areas that we can grow into is east. We're confined at the north, at the south, and at the west. So geographically, that's the only area that we can grow into. With regard to the 1/8 of a mile specifically, we're currently in conversation with about 110 acres of property between 3 property owners to annex into the city. So if we were to stick with the 1/8 of a mile right now, we've already exceeded that 1/8 of a mile just in these particular conversations. We have a minimum lot size of 1 acre. Agriculture suburban is a 2 acre. So it gels with what we would require. We do have a comp plan. We are in the process of reviewing that and preparing to make any updates that are necessary. We contract with the Kootenai County Sheriff's Department for law enforcement coverage. Some of the things that we would like to see, and of course, one of the most important reasons of having an area of impact to that extent beyond the 660 was so that we get notification of what's happening on those areas, because that particular area of impact, there is no other way to get off that property except through the city of Dalton Gardens. So whatever happens there definitely impacts us significantly, whether it be by construction, roads, intersections. When you've got that much land that can be developed, that is a big impact on a little city that isn't prepared to deal with it if they're not part of the conversation. We would require within the ACI area of impact that the road, the standards of the roads be brought to the city standards, especially at intersections that interface with the city roads. And again, like I had mentioned, we would desire notification of any building permits within the area of impact. There's been some issues with that in the past that we would like to fix, and hopefully moving forward, have a good relationship with regard to that. Well, those are the main points, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
That 110 acres, is it contiguous right now to city limits?
Yes.
Okay, so whatever map is approved, it's not gonna affect those annexations. Cause you don't need to be within the map to annex, it just has to be contiguous with the other city.
Well, as long as they all go in together, yes.
Well, you couldn't do that anyway, you couldn't,
Right.
really, a non-contiguous parcel.
You know what, let me just press the kind of turn, let me look. Yes, they are. It would be about 80 acres at the north side of the area of impact, and then 10 acres at about at the center. If you were to take Hanley out, it would be those 10 acres.
Thank you. Okay, next is the city of Fernand. Is anyone here from the city of Fernand? City of Harrison. Anybody from the city of Harrison?
How are you guys doing? Good afternoon. My name is Tyler Cooper. I work for H&H Engineering. I'm city planner for the city of Harrison. Let's see, if we go to the.
I'll just need to speak up just a little bit because the microphone is.
We go to the Harrison area of impact with 660 feet. So this is a map based on just the 660-foot criteria itself. Just to give you guys a quick view of that. And if you could go from that map to the next map where I give the rationale for which areas we want a little bit over 660 and which areas that we don't. This section right here, the city doesn't want to go anywhere northeast of Highway 97. And so this was originally included in that 660, but we don't want to have any of this. This was already within that original AOI, and it has a little bit that's just south of 97, so they want to keep this. This area right here as well, we want to keep, especially because we have a floodplain overlay district that protects this, the Harrison Slough, which is, we have regulations in place for that. We recently annexed this portion right here, this parcel, this parcel, this parcel, and this parcel. The city used to be only contiguous with this little piece right here. We don't want anything on this side. This is all Idaho Department of Fish and Game. This will never be annexed ever. This trail of port lands will never be annexed in. There is a possibility here with the Rock properties and farmland because of our wastewater facility plant and the reuse program that we have going on to reduce phosphates and everything. So that is a possibility. This one's not ever likely to be annexed. And then down here, I went and spoke with a lot of the folks down here, and it's pretty contentious. And a lot of the folks here don't ever want to be annexed into the city of Harrison. Whereas there are up here north, there are these ones right here are just outside of 660 feet, but to make it, the city of Harrison, it is a lake town. We wanted to make it hit the shoreline and then just stop. And so we want our area, in fact, just reach the shoreline and then just end from there and not go north of 97 from here and not go east of Highway 97.
So the areas in green, you can't annex those anyway until the areas in blue.
Correct. Yeah, that is correct, yeah.
So you've got
Oh, definitely, yeah, and it's also important to note that the city of Harrison is in a moratorium. HMH was able to get, I think, around like 13 million plus for, you know, a lot of the wastewater facility plants and a lot of the infrastructure that we have to update. And there's a lot of guidelines that we have to go through with DEQ. So they're doing a really good job of that, replacing a lot of lead lines, you know, we found wood lines. And so inside the city itself, a lot of that is being taken place, you know, within the meat, potatoes, and Harrison that, you know, we're all familiar with. Whereas the water and wastewater all stops about right here for utilities. So everything up here is gonna be your wells, it's gonna be your, you know, your sorry, panhandle health, you know, regulations. So it's a little bit different. Eventually, do we want to see city utilities, you know, go, on ITDs right away and then up here and have a lift station here and, you know, provide municipal city services? We do. I think a really important thing about, a really important thing to think about is that when we do, it will be a lot more, it'll be better for the water quality, right? When all of these people are on city water. And with regard to population growth, the expected growth of Harrison is expected to more than 2x after the moratorium is out. So we're around 215 people. It's expected to go to 744 when the moratorium is up and they have all the utilities that are upgraded have a much higher capacity. And there's a lot of, if you could just move down. Right there, yeah, and there's a lot of, for example, right here, we have the Stonegate at Harrison. This is a really sought after place for people who are trying to build. I mean, once the moratorium's up, all these parcels are most likely going to, you know, sell. And when the utility and the infrastructure here, besides just the water, the wastewater is here, it's really going to be, you know, be popped out pretty well. And if there's anything that's similar that happens at Powder Mountain, which was originally supposed to happen prior to the 2008 crash, that's why we say next. I could see that area being very sought after as well, especially for those who, you know, are trying to retire, just maybe get away from kind of the bigger city feel that the Rapture Prairie Valley is kind of seems. But yeah.
Any questions? I'm just curious when I think those water services will be expanded out to the areas.
North. What is your? So a lot of what the dock builders here, the guy who owns the dock builders, he annexed this portion. He's gonna have to do some utility and infrastructure that he's gonna have to pay for himself to do what he wants to do. His use is gonna be RV parks, campsites for those little islands here. It's gotta do quite a bit of stuff. But once the working with him and working with ITD and finding more grant funds and funding, like we did for all the stuff they have now, that will be the real big push. Once that door is open, then you'll be like, hey, we have the money to put a lift station or a boost station over here, you know, to have water here, because this is a hill. Right here's about a hill, and then up here's a little bit more flat. And so I think once we have that all set in place, it'll be a lot more clear as far as like the light at the end. I think right now, one of the main focus of the utilities is making sure that the water quality is really safe, especially because of some of the issues with the sediment there and all the EPA fund site stuff that flows down. And so, you know, we're just trying to make sure that breaks everything. It's nobody's water is being polluted, but definitely in the future there will be some utilities that.
3 to 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what?
10. I'd say 10. Yeah, if I'm alive, 10, 15. Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty far.
It certainly is. Yeah. Yeah, certainly is.
So the new law says that AOIs have the services within 5 years. And so that's why the green or the green public's not qualify.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
But the blue is okay as far as, because it's in 660. Gotcha, okay. Yeah, I can edit that, I can pull all this out and have it, yeah. And then the state statutes every 5 years to update.
You can update anytime you want.
Gotcha,
You just-
yeah, just in case, somebody, we have a developer that comes in and he's, wanting to do everything and he does it. Then yeah, it'd be great to come back if we need to, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone from the city of Hutter? Anyone from the city of Hutter? Rathdrum?
Good morning, Commissioners. James Media, City Director, I'm the city planner. We have resubmitted the original area of impact that we submitted last December, primarily because the boundaries of that match our master water, sewer, and transportation plans. So it incorporates the area that we're already planning for. Really, I believe what we're looking for is to be able to be notified of things that are going on in that area. We're looking for coordination or alignment of connector and arterial roads to rural subdivisions so that they work together. It would be nice to have, as several cities have mentioned, a dedication of right of ways matching our municipal requirements in those, as well as public dedication rather than private roads. And we'd like to be notified in land use actions where we're planning for like low density residential. If you guys are looking at something to allow commercial or industrial in there, because really what we're looking for in this area is just coordination of planning activities.
Okay.
It's not it. It's reasonable.
Any questions?
Without seeing the map, I don't know, how much, because again, we're trying to remain flexible within the city's needs, but then
Right.
and also being very, tree man, one second.
Right. The eighth of a mile is kind of restrictive in that, if you're outside of the eighth of a mile, you can approve something that does not at all match with the city's plan. And that's another industrial site where we're planning for residential growth in that area. So the eighth is kind of restricted as far as planning, even 5 years out. So that's why we're asking for it. Obviously, it's up to you guys. Not making any demands. We're just asking that.
Doesn't the county's land use prevail over the cities, even with the impact?
You can't unless you agree to concessions, and that's what we're asking for. I think that's what everybody's kind of asking.
Thank you. Next up is the city of Spirit Lake.
Hi, I'm Connie Kruger. I'm here representing the city of Spirit. I think that the city's submitted a letter. I think similar to what we've heard from some of the other cities in the discussion today. The city of Spirit Lake is really looking for a recognition of their future land use now and the planning that they would put into that. I think we settled on the. So we do recognize that the Senate bill and some of the case law that went into creating that Senate bill. And the confusion that there is in Idaho over areas of city impact, historic areas of city impact. And if you look at the old area city impact agreements, there were requirements for the cities to apply, or for the county to apply city infrastructure standards, particularly in the 4 cities on the Rathdrum Prairie. And it can lead to a lot of confusion. Whose rules apply? How do you logistically go through and plan the recently when the 2 different parties are bound by an agreement to extend infrastructure? So we recognize that
that has practical difficulties, and we recognize that that was a big part of this law. And so the city of Spirit Lake, we're not actually asking for any type of standards to be applied. What we're really looking for is a recognition by the county, and it could even be in your comprehensive planning for the plan update, where you recognize where our city is planned, and in doing that, provide notification, perhaps the opportunity to talk with, maybe commercial applicants and folks like that. And it just made that opportunity to plan for land uses that complement each other. So in other words, when you're doing your plan update and your consultants, is it getting close to the city and you're looking at how do we do compatible use? Maybe recognize that we've already done our planning for this area, but we're also going out and we're doing sewer master plans, we're doing water master plans. And having that perhaps reflected in your own plans, or even having this consultation opportunity for both. I think that would be great. We're not opposed to the 660 limitation. We see what the law was trying to do. For the city of Spirit Lake, our area impact looks bigger than what we practically understand that. Some of these properties like Spirit Lake East, if they ever needed to tap into city water and sewer, if they need to connect to our local roads. Same with the Pink area down the south. So those are waterfront properties that can run into issues with wells and stuff there. So again, bigger than what we're looking for, but we definitely have some opportunity sites too, like you look at the little kind of the reddish brown polygon down to the south of the Pink there. That's a big opportunity site for us for future commercial and economic development that we can't get into the existing Wilson part of Spirit Lake. So having that opportunity to be a part of the county's comprehensive plan, to not other plan be recognized, to make sure that this investment in our infrastructure plans is worthwhile, is really important to us. And I do just want to note that when cities plan for water, sewer, and transportation, which are usually independent plans, those are really expensive and take multiple years. I know that for some of the cities, a wastewater master plan update, a water master plan update can run $250,000. It can run more than that. Likely what we got in smaller communities like this is still a big investment for communities that have many funds. So, looking at the bill, we think that the kind of the issue that we have here is that historically in Idaho, we've used areas of city impact as our future planning boundaries. So they've kind of been synonymous with each other. And so what we're looking for here is just truly a future planning boundary that's recognized by utilities, and then the regulatory or city impact that we need to use in the bill. So we'd like that opportunity for further discussion. We did come late to the discussion with the county. Ben and the department reached out, but Spirit Lake actually had a 20-year-old conference plan with a discussion on January. So we don't have an updated 660 map for you, but we'll produce that as part of this. So planning boundary, plan consideration, and without just that opportunity list. We don't think the bill precludes it. We don't see anything on sustainable, nor does some of them. So. That's a question on that parcel that you pointed out. Right now, is it contiguous or not?
That one is not contiguous, but from what we've heard today, nothing precludes annexation. If any of the requirements.
If it is contiguous.
Yeah, so maybe get to that point where we can provide.
Right. So, has that property owner had any conversations with the city?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think to me, that would be the difference for a city to say, hey, we want residential here, we want commercial here. But the owners of those properties that's not what they're looking at. So, yeah, I mean, recognizing, you know, what your grades and things that you decide, and obviously with new boards, that could change as well, so.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example of that when we reached out, if you look at the large, green polygon in the lower right, that is property, I think that's the Idaho. So we actually had, you know, the idea of perhaps providing more commercial opportunities in that area, and we reached out to them and said, you know, we're really not interested. So we kind of went with the status quo, which in our comprehensive plan, a lot of the green areas and pink areas, if you actually look at the definitions of those completely reflect the county zone. And they're called rural preservation, and they're called restricted residential preservation. So in our own comprehensive planning process, we didn't deviate at all from what the county is saying about this, and we recognize that this is valid areas that we really have now development interest in. But again, for us to plan for, you know, perhaps a sewer water failure or a road connection, we want to include. So I think if the county's comprehensive plan recognizes the planning that we've done, the text of it reflects those concepts. We're not aggressively trying to mix those. In fact, we're really not interested. We're just trying to be good neighbors to open the door. And again, historically, I think there's been belief that you can only annex in areas of city impact. And then also this idea that planning boundary, you know, sitting on the same thing, and they don't need to. So that's what we're kind of asking for, a new recognition and concept that we will see across the United States, which is just future. So that's what we think.
Any other questions? No, thank you. Okay, next up is the city of State Line. Is there anyone here from State Line? Anyone from State Line? All right, and city of Orland. Anybody from the city of Orland? Okay. That concludes our city.
So at this point, I think we would just like to maybe get some direction from the board as to how you would like us to proceed.
Well, today was not a day to make decisions. So I think we just need to kind of think about it a little bit and then just set it up for the next meeting and we can talk about, you know, what makes sense. What doesn't. So can we just plan on that for the next community development meeting? Okay.
And then if there's a priority, so for instance, you know, I read how many cities we went through today. But if there's a priority, like something they're waiting on us, then I'd like to be under their order.
We'll meet in 2 weeks. That one for you. Yep. Okay.
Actually, that's a really packed meeting. 2 weeks, we got 3 cases and got a lot of public comment. So I don't know if we want to put more on that day.
Well, probably not, because we're gonna hit a hard stop pretty soon here,
Yeah. So, next one would be July 9th.
July 9th.
Yeah.
Does that work for the board? Okay. We'll do July 9th. Anything else?
So
All right, so the next item on business, item 5, comprehensive plan update with SCJ. All right, if you're gonna want to try to go through this a little bit and then maybe meet up again later to kind of finish it, because I don't know how much time you had allocated for it.
For this presentation,
Yes,
I think we can get through the point. Okay. Just look for more basic.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I will be quick and brief. We'll give a lot of slides, but they should go pretty quickly. Primarily, I just wanted to provide an update on where we're at with the comprehensive plan, of which, and where we're at primarily with public engagement, because that's the phase we're in currently. So what is the comprehensive plan? Just a quick refresher, which I probably don't need to belabor that point with this audience today, so I'm gonna skip over that. Engagement efforts so far. Where do we get this over the next results? I don't think I can. We have started our road show in various communities throughout the county. We're providing penny polls. We have an online survey. I'll go over some of those results. Had great turnout for the online survey. And we started our in-person engagement events in Spirit Lake. We have other upcoming events happening in Harrison, in Kootenai, in early July 11th or 17th. And we'll be in Worley and in Harrison on July 25th and 26th, the community events happening there. We've also interviewed some service providers. We have a few more to go. Our outreach efforts have included press releases, social media, email blasts that actually was fairly successful. Mail flyers with tax assessments, which I think people are still opening up. I'm gonna start with what we've heard from service providers. We've had some really good in-depth interviews with some service providers. And again, we're not complete with that. But you know, the things unsurprisingly focused around the rapid pace of growth and the concerns that affect a variety of topics, including housing, economic development, water quality, long-term supply, wildfire, continually growing concern and some ways to mitigate that. Some concerns about dispatch systems, the transportation I-90 corridor and the limited north-south connections, you know, is somewhat being addressed through work by ITP currently. A diverse economy, where, you know, housing is the other side of the coin to that, of course, is wages. And as we've shown in previous presentations, there could be a little bit more balancing with other economic sectors to balance out the wages relative to the rising housing costs as the county and the cities will then become more and more popular from residents moving here. Acknowledge there are a lot of conflict points as we look at these priorities, right? The property rights versus low density development versus affordability versus water quality versus rural character and open space. Those are all conflicts that we're going to be addressing as we move into the next phase of coming up with policies, goals, and implementing actions to essentially implement the vision that we're going to be working through the planning commission and updating you as we move forward. Here is the responses so far. Before our online survey, we've received over 1,000 responses, about 750 fully completed, a total of 1,000 partially completed. Even though someone doesn't hit submit button, you still collect data, but don't tell anyone. Oops, too bad, too late. I think it's important to understand who we're bringing from. So we have a lot of demographic questions towards the end of the survey. Mostly within the unincorporated county, about almost 35% within a city in the county. Vast majority own property, and a pretty significant majority are two-person households, and most do not have children. So we're getting a lot of responses from likely retirees, folks, not a lot of youth responses, something that we're going to try to correct as we move forward into the final phases of our broader public engagement efforts. So what have we heard so far? No big surprise. We like to ask what people like about Kootenai County. This helps shape our vision into the future. Obviously, the rural character of it, the lake, the beauty, and the recreation. Top concerns about growth, transportation, preservation of open space, of course, housing, and then water quality supply, public safety. Priorities to address, preservation of working lands, and that could also be translated to open space lands. Protecting water, transportation, wildlife habitat, recreation, all the things that we heard people, why people, love, living in Kootenai County. So this question, kind of relates to some of the comments we heard earlier in the meeting. How important is it that development pays fair share? And the very best and probably one of the strongest, responses that we've heard so far. Vast majority of those surveyed so far, do you think development should pay its fair share, for new development? And as we've heard from service providers, the capacity of, with new development, the rapid pace of it is a growing concern, across the board. Types of housing needed, in cities, more variety, of course, than we heard, for those in, rural areas. I think it's kind of interesting that the cluster development as, you know, not a top, but, fairly significant proportion of those survey support. Something we may consider in policy, maybe future code updates, for to take a look at. I'm starting to blast it this really fast because I don't have much time. Back to the diversification of the economy, being supported small businesses, agriculture, manufacturing, health sciences, and some technology. Acknowledge that you're very strong right now in tourism and retail, and also health sciences, as we've showed in previous presentations in the existing condition report. All which can be found at keepingkootenai.org, as well as a link to the survey. Moving into the parks and waterways components, this is a parallel effort. We are working on a parks and waterways plan. We presented to the Parks and Waterways Board earlier this morning. They had some great suggestions for for ways to reach more folks, primarily for that effort, but also the broader comprehensive plan effort. No surprise that expanding access to parks, waterways, recreation, and open space and trails seem either very important or somewhat important by most respondents so far. Barriers, overcrowding, parking, were top two. We found no barriers to existing recreation facilities. And regional trail connectivity being somewhat or very important by those who took the survey. Types of trails for priorities, hiking, multi-use, and some motorized. Should be acknowledged, the motorized trails pay for a lot of the trails used by other users as well for registration fees. And okay, this is the kind of probably some of the more interesting feedback we've got. I should increase this just a little bit so you can see the picture here. So the survey had a lot of mapping components to it, and folks were able to go in and pinpoint areas they thought should be prioritized for different things. We heard about boat pumpouts, boat launch priorities, buoy priorities that garnered some discussion with Parks and Waterways this morning along the Spokane River. Bathrooms, of course, trailheads, shelter priorities, playground priorities, sport court priorities. Now, this is kind of for the Parks and Waterways Board, kind of new territory for them. Their focus is primarily or even exclusively on the waterways of Lake Coeur d'Alene. And this effort is maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit to more inland consideration based so far based on what we've heard. There are properties and undeveloped areas for recreation within Kootenai County. Not a lot of developed parks, of course. There are some really well-developed parks within the cities of the county, but we're looking at that as a potential consideration moving forward for some policy implementation park concepts that we hope to be working on soon. Open space, no big surprise that we've heard, around the plains, or the Coast Falls, as a priority for maintaining. Again, does not necessarily mean, acquisition, but, farmland preservation, working lands. We also, I threw up this map, which isn't part of the survey on the right side of the screen, which has two things on it. One is the newly mapped SARAs, that stands for Sensitive Aquifer Recharge Areas, that was provided by the Aquifer District. And we heard early on from the, Inland Northwest Land Conservancy. And we asked them, well, based on your research, what is your priority? What would, what are some, you have to be data for priorities for conservation? And the reason for that is that if open space, is a priority going forward, they might be a partner, for implementing open space. So we thought, seeing where people prioritize, open space, where there might be some other benefits and potentially partners to implement it, like we were going up here. We also had a fun mapping exercise for paved pathway priorities and unpaved trail priorities. You'll be surprised for the paved pathway, multi-use trails. We're seeing a lot of north-south connections, which was also kind of identified as a concern, transportation stakeholders we've interviewed thus far. And then unpaved or recreation trail priorities on the right. So overall, a lot of support for preserving open space and working land, protecting water quality and supply, providing recreational access, and improving transportation infrastructure. Fair share development costs came up pretty strongly, as I mentioned, so ensuring that growth and services can and overall manage growth vision. Now, I should kind of go back to what we heard in our early service provider interviews, and I think why we understood is, and as we talked about in one of our earlier presentations, where you can get a lot of agreement on vision and goals, but the implementation is where a lot of debate happens. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions. Also just wanted to go over where we're at in the schedule. And we have some more interviews to do up here, so that's kind of small. We're meeting with the planning commission later today, and we're basically right here, full day of Kootenai County for me, and we're gonna start looking towards some ideas for vision, goals, policies, and concepts for recreation facilities, and what implementing this vision could ultimately look like. We will be producing a second survey once we have more to chew on, and we hope that at the July events, we can give folks a little bit more to chew on. And I think we're thinking of closing the survey here in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be kind of coordinating on some additional outreach ideas to reach a more broad demographic. I'll just leave this up. This is kind of our community refresh HGO board that we provided events, some basic data that we've collected in the earlier phase of the comp plan, and with that, to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
When you talk about not having enough younger people respond, is the survey easy to do on phone?
Yes, I haven't done it on the phone myself, but yes, it is designed so it can work on multiple devices. We've also been providing an in-person, we created a simple written version that we provided events. The flyer we have is the QR code that designed for phones to pick us. And one thing that we were talking about today in the Parks and Waterways Board was maybe local businesses or areas where kids and families are to hand out those flyers. We have them designed and printed, and that might be a good way to kind of process and graphic outreach.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Any other comments or anything from staff? All right, well, 11:59, I think. Meeting adjourned.